Hello everyone, welcome to yet another video on Balaji Aviation with me Praveen, and today we are going to talk about special attention passengers and briefing. So in this particular module, the cabin crew member has a lot of protocols with regards to these such passengers. So let's see the docket today. We will be understanding who are our special passenger in different categories. We also cover unaccompanied minors travel, who basically what are the integrities involved in unaccompanied minors, and also cover wheelchair passengers, blind and deaf passengers, also cover medical case passengers. So let's understand who are special needs passengers. So we all have passengers generally who come to the aircraft and they are very fit and fine, they don't require some special attentions. So these people are also known as able-bodied passengers. On the other side, there are the passengers who has a difficulty in walking, so they require such wheelchairs. So in case of any emergency, they could be children, they could be sick passengers, they could be passengers require such medical assistance. Well friend, these are the people who comes with under these category. So the crew member has their own responsibility to assist these passengers in a most caring manner. So friends, let's talk about different categories. Passengers with reduced mobility are categorized into various groups, which is distinguished by the disability of the passengers who require that particular assistance. So these are identified in aviation by a code which is known as AIRIMP. So these are the codes which is given to the passengers. So everybody knows all these codes. So let's talk about some special need passengers codes. We'll start from BLND, stand for blind passengers. There's a DEAF, which is commonly understand that passengers who cannot hear actually. So next we are talking about UNM, unaccompanied minor. If any child who is below the age of 16 years, known as UNM, and it could be children who is traveling absolutely without their parents or guardian, are undertaken by the help of crew. So the crew needs to take care of children who are UMNR. Well friends, let's understand wheelchair are of three types. WCHR is a wheelchair on ramp. Passenger with a walking disability. So passenger require assistance in the airport terminal. The wheelchair passenger will be assisted where the aircraft is parked, also known as a ramp area. Now let's understand WCHS, wheelchair on step. Passenger who cannot ascend or descend on steps where the wheelchair required. So the passenger will be assisted till the door of the aircraft. Now let's understand WCHC, wheelchair inside the cabin area. Passenger who are completely immobile, so they require wheelchair at the time of boarding, and they basically come inside the aircraft and they have to be assisted till the seat which has been assigned to them. So let's understand MEDA, the medical passenger who require medical assistance, that is MEDA. Now moving on oxygen, the passenger who require oxygen. Now there might be certain passenger who are not well and require some kind of medical assistance with regards to needing oxygen on board. And because of this oxygen requirement, pilot need to know about oxygen pass. So let's understand STCR is a stretcher passenger, means those passengers who have been declared by MBBS doctor that they need to be carrying inside the cabin only on stretcher. So these are the stretcher passengers. So friends, let's talk about boarding and disembarking. The general protocol to be followed. There are such general protocols need to be followed with regards to boarding and disembarking. So let's look at these procedures. The person with reduced mobility who self-identifying as a needing assistance and additional time need to be given to them. So a person who is sick or on the wheelchair need to be having pre-boarding, means they need come before all the other passengers. So the simple reason being that these people need a lot of time to go their seats. So there are other passengers who also take more time to take their seats. So the pre-boarding is that they come before each and every passengers come on the boarding, and they are disembarking last, meaning once all the passengers after landing come out of the aircraft, Wheelchair passenger and people with the reduced mobility are disembark at the last, because again it take a lot of time to get out of the aircraft as well. So well friends, maximum number and escort requirement. Let's understand some general protocol to be followed. Now it is very essential that the maximum number that you can take of these special need passengers need to be definitely lesser, because the number of passengers with reduced mobility should not exceed the number of able-bodied passengers capable of assisting with an emergency evacuations requirement. So friends, if at all got bad, so there is emergency, you need people who are not much needed assistance, but able-bodied passengers who can take care of themselves, as well as to reduce the mobility. With regards to escort requirement, passenger with reduced mobility who are not able to reach an emergency exit without assisting in the reasonable time should be escorted. So whenever there is a escort for this kind of a passenger who is traveling with reduced mobility, like a wheelchair or a stick, etc., so they need to have an escort traveling with them, and this particular escort need to be 16 years old or even older than that, well physically and mentally able and willing to evacuate the passengers with reduced mobility in case of any emergency. Well, the cabin crew member is always there to help out these special need passengers, but it is always advisable of these people with reduced mobility and have an escort who can actually help them whenever there is emergency on board the aircraft. So friends, look at the evacuation procedure. During an emergency evacuation, the cabin crew member is responsible for evacuating passengers with reduced mobility that are not able to reach an emergency exit without any assistance in a reasonable time. The passenger with reduced mobility, requiring assistance to reach an emergency exit should be evacuated by their escort. Depending on the situation, cabin crew may assist them. Well, friends, it is important to understand these escorts who are traveling along with the people with reduced mobility need to be seated along with them. However, in case of any emergency situation, these escorts are supposed to help the person with reduced mobility during the evacuation. In case they are not able to, so the cabin crew member is definitely going to help them out. Well, friends, understand seating for the special need passengers. So there has to be certain protocol for the seating arrangements for these passengers who has requirement for special need passengers. So a passenger who reduced mobility passenger need to be seated on a seat with the movable armrest, which is movable, so that people with reduced mobility can easily fit to those seats with any too much intention on them. The second part of the seat that provide additional leg room space for the passengers who cannot bend his or her leg, although not an emergency exit. Ideally, the first row width of the cabin is placed which has an extra space with the seat. So in an ideal situation, the person who with reduced mobility, for example, wheelchair passenger, should be seated on the first row of the aircraft. If seat is not available for person, will sit on the second, third row with the aisle seat. Always not in the window, but in the middle seat. Then there are more important things need to be followed is on the overwing exit. So should never ever let the person with reduced mobility or a wheelchair sit on the particular over seat exit, because during the emergency they will never be able to open the door and help the other passenger in the evacuation. The third part of this, a seat close to the lavatory or exit for the passenger with a mobility impairment. A person who is not able to walk at all should be seated next to the lavatory, because of the fact when they want to use the lavatory, you will expect to them to walk a lot of distance. So now friends, going to individual safety briefing. Certain briefing need to be made for these passengers who have reduced mobility, or a wheelchair passenger, or even UNM. So these safety briefing given by the cabin crew before the flight takes off. So these people should be gone through these briefing in details, and should they have any assistance or any help, so they always press the call button to call the cabin crew about any kind of a help. So let's understand about carriage of wheelchairs. Now certain protocols to be followed with regards to carriage of wheelchair. A wheelchair is a heavy instrument, and it need to be definitely to be foldable, and make sure that if you cannot put it inside the cabin, it has to generally go into the cargo area or aircraft. Nowadays, most of the airlines do not allow any wheelchairs to be carried inside the cabin. So hence protocols for the airlines in such wheelchairs need to be foldable conditions, and it need to be gone into the forward cargo of the aircraft, bulk side of the aircraft, so that the protocol for carrying a wheelchair. So let's talk about lavatories. The protocol need to be followed for the lavatories. Well, lavatory is of course very important for the special need passengers. However, when the seat belt sign comes off, or rather comes on, that is the time when the people will not allow to use lavatories. Lavatories need to be locked by the cabin crew whenever a special need passenger need to be use the lavatory. So they need to press the call button, and the cabin crew member will come and help them to remove them from their particular seat and take them to the nearest lavatory. Now friends, it's important to understand that people who have special need to be seated with very closely to the lavatory, so that it can convenient when they want to use these kind of a lavatories. So friends, let's cover blind passenger. Certain protocols with regards to blind passenger. The blind passenger can be of two category. One is complete blindness, second is partial blindness. Let's look at certain protocols with regards to blind passenger. With regards to blind passenger, first, cabin crew member need to have access the situation, understand what kind of blindness the person is having. They need to make sure that they treat the symptoms, utilize first aid kit equipment as installed. So in case the blind passenger need any kind of a help regarding the first aid, so make sure they give to the passenger. So other crew member to provide backup equipments. Ensure the flight crew or the captain of the flight must be aware about the blind passenger. Request medical assistance from the passenger in case he required any kind of a help. Complete any necessary paperwork for the carrying a blind passenger. It is very important that paperwork need to be completed by the cabin crew, and it has to be completed form. Medical assistance after landing, in case there is a medical assistance after landing. So the past landing pilot need to be aware, and the blind passenger from the very first need to be assist. So that is all about. From the last not the least, we have covered as unaccompanied minor, we have covered wheelchair passenger, blind passenger, deaf passenger, medical case, emergency passengers we have covered. And I hope you enjoyed to listening this particular video, and more videos coming in your way. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.